Hello, Dave and Tim here at the Single Malt Review as we journey back to Campbellton for some more Scotch Single Malt.
Now, some of you will have already seen this bottle and seen that it's been opened and would have been clenching and, oh no, we've lost one. We've lost a Springbank to the to those uncouth drinkers of whiskey out there that don't just hoard it and sell it on. But yes, through the kindness of one of whiskey's true heroes, who hid this one away and made sure only people who are actually going to bloody drink it bought it. Yes, I have come into possession of this Springbank, 18 years old, and my goodness gracious, is there's a hard to find whiskey these days. My oh my, Springbank has gone, in the last 2 years exclusively, has gone from a quite nice whiskey to some of the hottest nonsense out there. And there's no great conspiracy, there's no grand plan as to how this happened. Springbank is simply not a very large distillery, and their production remains what it is. And some awful person decided that, oh well, that makes it rare.
Therefore collectible.
And boom, done. Grey market, secondary market, doesn't even have to be any colour you want. Almost impossible to get at retail now because it just gets snapped up. People just keep coming in and out the door as, you know, their brother, or they put a different moustache on, whatever they do. And this just routinely ends up time and again on auctions and reselling. And it's so depressing to see because Springbank's such a beautiful whiskey. But anyway, the grizzle over. It's not a solvable problem because Springbank is not going to increase production. Well, they did. They built a whole other distillery in Glengyle, and now we have the lovely Kilkerran, but it's not Springbank, so that doesn't solve the collector's issue. But anyway, maybe we'll, I don't know. And once the apocalypse has been and gone, then Springbank will be cheap again. But in the meantime, we'll just enjoy this one while we have got it. We're very, very lucky. So, Springbank 18, what is in it? It is, of course, Springbank, so the middle of the road, neither Hazelburn nor Longrow, but as Dave's about to find out, I think this has got a lot of Longrow in its genes. There's quite a lot of the old peat smoking off this one.
But that's profoundly sweet too.
And I don't know exactly what its heritage is here, but I think judging by just by the look of it, it's obviously got a lot of sherry in its lineage too. Springbank likes to keep things tricky by doing almost all of their stuff in the form of batches, and so nothing's the same for more than a few years. This is probably the 2022 bottling of the 18, so it's pretty recent, but it could be the 2018, and before that I think the label was blue or something, so you could tell them apart. But they're all very, very, very different, and this one is pretty different even to what I was expecting for old Springbank. So we'll get into it before I waffle on about it more, but I certainly will, so buckle in for that.
That's a really pleasant nose on that.
Yeah, the peat is pretty immediate, and it's that nice dry mineral Springbank peat, and besides that,
there's an overwhelming sweetness coming through.
Yeah, sweetness. There's
stewed fruit, fresh fruit.
Springbank, as it gains age, gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter, and I don't think anybody really knows what's going on, but it happens in almost every single thing they make, Longrow, Hazelburn, or otherwise. It's a bit more pronounced in Hazelburn and Springbank because that peat is less of an offset factor, but I always recall something Charles MacLean described Springbank as. I think the paragraph was, Springbank needs age and takes it superlatively well. And I think that was a very true statement. There's a reason you don't see Springbank under 10 years, typically, because it just doesn't do very well as a very, very young whiskey. It just doesn't fare in that mould. But once it's mature, it's very, very good. But then once it's old whiskey, and that sort of kind of, I guess, old whiskey begins at 18 years old and then spirals into the unattainable 20s, 30s, whatever, it goes on this trip of extraordinary sweetness and richness and wild stuff. It's really, really, really quite scrumptious. So this is really, really just beginning to blossom into that, and the note I always get from it is strawberry jam. More of a strawberry jam X strawberry compote. If you get Rose's chocolates in your country, then there's a strawberry one, which I guess you'd call, is that a fondant, Dave? It's a fondant, right? I don't eat a lot of sweets, as you can tell, but so it's like a strawberry icing, I suppose, but that's got that particular fresh but quite buttery, creamy, and got that very, very fruity strawberry ester, but then a huge amount of sweetness, and that's what I get increasingly in Springbank as it ages. And so that's just got a little trickle of that one coming in here. So, on the palate at full strength, which is 46%. And as if you needed me to say, you either know Springbank or you can just look at this bottle, not chill filtered and not coloured. Springbank does not truck with such practices over there. So,
that is a masterful balance of peat and sweetness.
It does indeed have the peatiness and the sweetness. I profoundly agree. This one, when I first opened it, which wasn't that long ago, only a few days, it was a little bit closed. I was a little bit worried, like, oh no, have I somehow ended up with the only ordinary bottle of Springbank in the entire world? But no. The funk was just waiting behind the door, and it has well and truly emerged. Now that Campbellton jazz is all over this one now.
Yeah, is it strawberry jam and fondant, like you described, backed up with some dark chocolate with a hint of bitterness. I mean, just a little waft of smoke, sort of like pipe tobacco.
For sure. Like slightly, one part fresh pipe tobacco and one part sort of old stubs, I guess, like a little bit of, like, ashtray is a pretty derogatory term for any sort of aroma, but it's that someone is not actively smoking, but they have been recently, kind of a thing.
The technical term for a little bit of a nub of burned pipe tobacco is a dottle.
There you go.
It's left over in a pipe after it's been smoked.
Just a hint of dottle on this one. But either way, it works very well, and there is another thing that could be taken as, bad, but is actually good. There is quite a little bit of sour sherry wood in this. If you imagine, many people don't drink out of wooden cups anymore because it's not medieval times, but due to medieval times and the reenactment of medieval times, I am sometimes frequent to drink out of a wooden vessel, and when you get water hanging around in wood and you end up, you don't wash it out properly, you drink it, there's this funny sourness. It's not a tannic, it's just sort of like the slightly fresh, slightly vegetal woody sourness you get, and I'm not quite sure where it comes from, but it's what you get in old sherry matured whiskey sometimes when the wood's gone, a little bit interesting on the way. And I quite like it because it adds it's a freshening element to what would otherwise be not a stodgy whiskey, but a very, very sweet one. Now, careful with the water. I have bowled this one over in my experiments with water, but it certainly benefits from a wee bit.
Yeah. Gone very restrained there because this is already a well-balanced and complex without being overly busy whiskey. Oh, that's enlivened the peat slightly, I think.
Yep, it was lit the fire.
Oh, there's more of that fruit. It's
peeled it back and it's really revealed that fresh fruit.
There is citrus coming through now. Lemon and lime, a bit of orange.
There's a youthfulness. 18 may be. There is a downright vibrant youthfulness to this whiskey.
That's come through from adding the water more than anything else, because before it had the kind of like the heft and the weight of an older spirit.
Yeah.
Now it's got some of that vigour is happen.
I've tried 18-year-old Springbank a multitude of times now, almost always at expos and tastings and things because, unattainable. But I don't think I've tried it and had it taste exactly the same ever. I've tried it and it's tasted way older than 18. It's long into the high 20s. I've tried it and it's tasted a bit close to this, which is fairly youthful, which is, again, not a detractor. It's just something interesting that's cropped up in this particular batch. I'm not sure the wood they've used. I'm not sure the top dressing management they've gotten down to, but it's as with all Springbank, very, very unlike the next Springbank to come out the door, which is in one way infuriating, but in another makes it one of the most sort of happening whiskies out there because you never quite know what you're going to get. But despite it being one of the more, and this only makes sense if I'm describing Springbank, one of the more staid Springbanks, because line this up to any other whiskey and you'd say this one's out of its mind with funk and weirdness, it is one of the more conventional Springbanks I have tried, which is neither here nor there in terms of quality. It's just an interesting marker for this one. And scores-wise, this one is a 9.0 for me. What do you think?
I'm in a similar field. This is a 91 for me. It delivers all the goods of a well-matured whiskey, well-balanced, just well-made. It hits all the right marks, hits them really well. It may be like quintessential Springbank, but it's a really good, instead of just being like average or middle of the road, it is just a perfect example of a distiller's style done to perfection.
And I'll just have to make this bottle last because it will be some time before me or anybody else will get a sane price on a bottle of Springbank until Thanos comes and deletes all the whiskey collectors and they'll just fade into flakes and drift away. Wouldn't that be ideal?
And all those collections will inevitably go on the market at some point.
Yeah. Well, maybe when the world is completely in flames, I'll just go and raid them, get the arseless chaps out, and away we go. It might be the only solution. Anyway, I'm getting off topic now. Slanger, we will be back with another one very, very soon. Thank you.